His book tour has turned now into a petty war against the Trump family. Her comments later on in the show. And since it's Christmas, we have something very important for you. Raymond Arroyo takes us behind the scenes of a special holiday journey of joy and remembrance for hundreds of Gold Star families. And he speaks to the catalyst behind it all, actor Gary Sinise. So stay tuned for that incredibly moving report. It's going to bring tears to your eyes. It did when I first saw it. But first, black-robed resistance. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, if you're like most Americans, you grew up with a special sense of reverence for judges. Watching films or reading books, regular folks have seen countless portrayals of judges as consummate professionals who set their own personal opinions aside and objectively weigh the merits of each case.
Since there has been no previous violation of this statute, there's no precedent to guide the bench passing sentence.
And the witness will address this court as Judge or Your Honor. I'm quite certain I've earned it.
Since the United States government declares this man to be Santa Claus, this court will not dispute it. Case dismissed.
I still get goosebumps every time I see that. But of course, then there's the real world, where certain judges act more like political pundits than impartial arbiters. Case in point, yesterday's sentencing hearing of former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Judge Emmett Sullivan, most recently a Clinton appointee, used his moment in the spotlight to castigate Flynn with incendiary charges that weren't even brought by the special counsel. At one point, he told the decorated lieutenant general, "Arguably, you sold your country out." Well, then he cited Flynn's failure to register as a foreign agent, and the judge actually used the word treason, but with clever phrasing. He told the court, "I wasn't suggesting that he was committing treason. I was just curious if he could have been charged. Lots of conspiracy theories out there." Since when do judges start invoking conspiracy theories as grounds for imposing additional jail time or any jail time on a defendant? The special counsel actually, recommended no jail time. Nevertheless, Judge Sullivan warned Flynn that even if he cooperated further with the special counsel, he could still serve time.
This has to be one of the most dramatic hearings that I have ever witnessed, and I've been here in Washington nearly 20 years.
It only got worse, by the way. Naturally, liberal pundits were quick to cheer their honorable comrade-in-arms activism.
But I will tell you this, that today, a judge in Washington, D.C. stood up for our country. He spanked everybody in Washington.
The judge can exhibit whatever type of temperament the judge would like to exhibit in the judge's courtroom.
None of them understood the basic moral outrage that Judge Sullivan was going to bring to the proceedings.
I think that today was a really good day for the justice system and that this judge really did his job.
Totally. Well, sure, they love the judge's theatrics because he's part of the resistance. And today he might have earned himself a full-time CNN contributor's contract, given the latest ruling. In a pre-Christmas permanent injunction, Judge Sullivan, and believe it or not, I read all 107 tedious pages this afternoon, ruled that Trump's tightening guidelines for granting asylum is illegal. Remember back when, it was back in June, when Jeff Sessions announced these new asylum rules?
Asylum is available for those who leave their home country because of persecution or fear on account of race, religion, nationality, or membership in a particular social group or political opinion. Asylum was never meant to alleviate all problems, even all serious problems that people face every day all over the world.
Common sense interpretation. No, well, the move was needed because asylum seekers were abusing the system. Aided by a lot of leftist NGOs, migrants began parroting lines about gang violence and domestic violence to establish this expanded credible fear category because they didn't want to return to their homeland. With Judge Sullivan's opinion, today it's back to business as usual, pre-Trump, the way it used to be. The judge not only, by the way, demands that the administration revert to the old rules of asylum entry, but further, he instructed that the government return to the United States the plaintiffs who were unlawfully deported and to provide them with new credible fear determinations consistent with the immigration laws. Would you like a mint on your pillow, too? In other words, all those deported have to be brought back for new asylum hearings. Now, I guess they can stay at Sullivan's house as they await trial. Who knows? But from his activist judicial high horse, Sullivan apparently isn't bothered by the growing backlog of 800,000 now immigration court cases. 30% of those involve asylum requests. That's more than triple the number from 2009. Now, we've been talking about the scourge of unelected judges substituting their own policy preferences for those of the American people's representatives since this show started back in October of last year. The president ultimately won, remember, on his travel ban at the Supreme Court. But for every issue from transgender people serving in the military to climate change to the 2020 census to the Keystone Pipeline, these activist judges have waged an assault on Trump's agenda. And they've exceeded their constitutional authority in almost every instance. We're reminded of how important it is that Trump gets his judicial nominees confirmed as quickly as possible. Mitch McConnell's done a pretty good job, but we need this done faster, more expeditiously, and like yesterday. And if this means staying in session for an extra few days every month or even maybe into the Christmas holiday, well, guess what? The country depends on it. The Constitution depends on it. And shame on Congress for not doing its job in the first place and passing urgently needed asylum reform at any point in the last 2 years. They had the House and the Senate. They should have addressed this issue. They should have done a lot on immigration, including pass that funding for the wall. They didn't. Shame on them. Shame on these judicial activists. And that's the angle. All right, joining me now with reaction is Joe DeGenova, former U.S. attorney, and Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, and Al Motor, attorney and Democratic strategist. Joe, what can we do about these activist judges? They're fighting Trump tooth and nail. Let's talk about Judge Emmett Sullivan. This was a stem winder of an opinion, by the way, 107 pages. Immigration law is pretty tedious stuff, but I practiced a little immigration law back in the day at my old law firm, so I know it fairly well. What is your take?
We have a rule. If it takes 107 pages to explain, it's probably wrong. It's pretty clear that the judge substituted his legislative and political judgment for that of the President of the United States. What the President did here was a perfectly reasonable rewrite of Obama's asylum rules. They are subject to a presumption of regularity, the President's rules. He denied him that. But more importantly, he used a weird standard. He said that the plaintiffs had a moral right to make certain arguments. That is ludicrous. That's juvenile. That's first-year law school nonsense. So when all is said and done, this is judicial anarchy. It's a shame. And after yesterday's performance...
That's a 1-2 punch for this judge.
After yesterday's embarrassing performance by this judge, I must say, one of the worst judicial performances I have ever seen in a courtroom. This coming after that is really a double whammy of embarrassment.
Al, bringing up, let's go to Flynn for a moment, bringing up the word treason. This was not an issue for the special counsel. Special counsel didn't use the word treason. An unelected judge on the district court in D.C. brought up the word treason. Like, oh, well, I know it's a conspiracy theory. I'm going to warn you, though, even if you keep cooperating, we can add jail time. What was that sentence of his?
Well, I mean, Laura, you're a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I serve as a clerk for a federal judge, and judges are obligated to tell defendants, even if you cooperate, you could still serve jail time. He needs to let him know what his punishment
might be. That was right
be.
after the treason, not treason line.
That's separate. Maybe that's a little bit excessive, but the point of it is he might serve jail time, and there's nothing biased about that. And we need to stop bringing down our legitimate institutions like the judiciary.
Do you think judges are beyond criticism? We shouldn't ever criticize a judge because he has a black robe on, or she has a black robe on, she gets life tenure. Is that really? Because I see what we're seeing is a subversion of the American people's will here.
But what's happening here is it's not the judges who are activists, it's activists going to the judges because, as you point out, the Congress hasn't done its job.
Jim Jordan, it is true. Congress hasn't done its job on this particular issue. I think that not funding the wall is going to go down as one of the worst worst things to have happened to this administration. Forget Mueller. The wall has to be built. And this was a scandal that it hasn't been built, but we'll get to that. But on the judicial tyranny stuff, these nationwide injunctions, Joe, you and I have talked about it before. One district court judge can rewrite national policy when Obama is the one who rewrote it with his immigration appeals judge.
Right. No, it's wrong. And look, we should change the law. So we have an amendment we're going to offer tomorrow, which actually would reform our asylum laws. 85% of the folks who come to this country.
Amendment to what?
Amendment to the spending bill. We're going to offer it as a Freedom Caucus. Take to the Rules Committee. It's two amendments. One's to build the wall. The other one is to reform our asylum laws. Because if you want to address the caravan issue, which we've been watching unfold for the last several months, the only way to do it, build the border security wall, reform our asylum laws, because 85% of the people who show up at the border and claim asylum aren't legitimate asylum seekers. And what did this judge say? Those who are sent back who aren't legitimate, you now have to pay for them to come
first
here.
Class. Bring them back United first class from Honduras. Take us to Galpa.
So
this is what Rush Limbaugh said today about this no wall getting built.
That was what Trump was going to do to get the wall built, under the premise that the president can take whatever action necessary, he deems necessary, for national security. So I know this looks like read my lips, no new taxes, and caving on it.
Well, but he says he's going to figure out a way to get it done. Joe DeGenova.
Well, it's very sad. We needed the wall. The wall is a key issue. It's important. Wherever walls are built, 95% of illegal crossings are cut out. It's an amazingly effective tool. And the notion that it has been made this devilish, fiendish thing, oh my goodness, a wall. Perhaps they would prefer the tear gassing and perhaps bullets as opposed to a wall. The people who oppose the wall are inviting violence, they're inviting disruption, and they are inviting further illegal immigration into the United States. I hope that when this thing runs out, when it's in February, the president says, that's it, no more, a wall, or I'm shutting it down.
Should have vetoed this. I'm going to say it right now. He's probably mad.
February. No, I agree with you.
All we do is kick it. And the president said last spring, I'm never doing this again. We're not doing omnibus. We're not going to. Paul Ryan said we're going to have a big fight about the wall.
He's got to live with that promise.
Paul Ryan's, what is he, like, released a 5-part miniseries on his own life in Congress? You see that on it? That thing was, God bless him, he's a nice person. It's embarrassing. That's an embarrassing thing he did.
There's an old line, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. We got to change it. We got to change it. Fool the American people 4 times, shame on Congress, because that's what we've done. 4 times we've promised them that we would build the wall and put it on the spending bill, and now we're saying, oh no, we're going to kick it to February when Pelosi's going to be Speaker. It'll never happen. We got to do it now.
But Al, I got to tell you, the Republicans also can, in good conscience, say, the Democrats had the chance to work with the president on this and refused to do so. They refused to do so.
This is a bipartisan problem that's been going on for decades, okay? Everybody in America wants compromise. But if the Republicans double down on the wall only and restricting asylum, you're going to have a situation where a lot more moderate Republicans lose, like the 40 who just lost in this last election. And it may be in the interest of your constituents, and I think you represent them well and able because they believe what you say. But I don't think that's what suburban voters believe or well-educated college
suburban voters see this thing at the border and like, whoo, let's loosen asylum laws or more. Let's 3 cheers for the judge.
I think all voters are for security, but they also want comprehensive
So everyone who's subjected to gang violence, any gang violence, that's a lot of chunk of the world, and domestic violence, you make a credible claim, and then you're in, right? Is that it? You put that up to a referendum of the American people, they'll kill it every time. That's a joke. By the way, the Senate just passed the continuing resolution. Get the champagne flutes. The futures are going up right now. The Senate just passed. The House, not going to pass. Yes? Yes.
We're going to offer our amendments. We're taking them to the Rules Committee. We're not going to vote for it unless the border wall funding, $5 billion, is on the bill.
All right. I want to move on to this telling exchange revealed in the former FBI Director Jim Comey's testimony. In October.
You think it's not that big a deal?
This straight. Comey's FBI never briefed President Obama on an ongoing investigation about the Democrats' nominee for the presidency. So how could Obama be so confident there was no national security risk?
Well, what's really interesting is what President Obama did was command influence. By publicly telling the FBI and the Department of Justice that she didn't break the law, he told them the result he
been trying to rebuild the world and police the world. It's now time to rebuild the United States and to properly police the United States. And that's what we're going to do.
Promises made, and perhaps the beginning of promises kept. On the international front, President Trump making the surprise announcement today that he's going to pull American troops out of Syria. Now, remember, Donald Trump ran on a non-interventionist platform, and just this past March, he signaled that this is what he wanted.
By the way, we're knocking the hell out of ISIS. We'll be coming out of Syria like very soon. Let the other people take care of it now. Very soon. Very soon we're coming out.
But the bipartisan interventionist cabal in Washington are still acting like we're in a post-9/11 mindset. Well, it's worth remembering. Obama ran against the Iraq war as a repudiation of the Bush doctrine, remember? So why are military and intel leaders who worked or supported Obama saying this?
Well, this is very typical of the Trump administration, that it's policy by tweet.
He looks for short-term wins, not the transformational approach of how do you make organizations better, how do you go for the long term.
You pull those advisors out, that sustainable security lapses, and then you have ungoverned spaces again.
What we have right now, essentially, is a president in almost a sort of a rogue operation, making impulsive, unilateral, and frequently bad judgments.
Joining me now are two men on opposite sides of this move. Jim Carafano, retired Army Colonel and Vice President of the Heritage Foundation, and Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, Senior Fellow at the Defense Priorities, who received a Bronze Star for his service in Afghanistan. All right, Jim, you think this was a strategic error for pulling out now? So my question is, what does America receive as far as a tangible benefit from remaining behind in Syria 2000?
Yeah, I don't know if we're on the opposite sides on this debate, because first of all, I don't know what side he's on.
Then leave the studio.
And I don't know what side.
What are we doing here?
Well, that's right. I don't know what.
Live TV. I mean,
no.
Okay,
I don't know what.
I've known Jim for a long time.
I don't know what side I'm on. You know what this is like? This is like somebody came and Roosevelt said, D-Day, what do you think, right? What's the plan? You know, how are we going to protect our interests? We don't know any of that. This might be a really smart thing. I've never been for a permanent base in Syria. I've always thought that was stupid. I thought we should do what we need to do to protect our interests. So when the president says we're coming out, what I read is everybody's response is exactly what their politics were the second before he said it. There's no analysis of what is the president actually going to do. So I think it's unfair at this point to go out and say, well, he's wrong. I mean, I think that's what Lindsey Graham said. I think it's just completely irresponsible.
Imprudent, correct?
I don't know. I don't know if it's imprudent, because I don't know is what's our plan to protect our U.S. interests? How are we coming out? Because we do have concerns, right? We don't, for example, right? We probably wouldn't like Israel and Iran to have a war. Oh, that'd probably be bad. We probably wouldn't want Jordan and Iraq destabilized.
So does that mean we always have to stay?
No, absolutely it doesn't mean. I was never the guy that said the answer is a permanent U.S. footprint.
Right, but every time, and Dan, you got to help me, because every time we get into a situation in one of these places in the Middle East, we're told if we pull out, chaos will ensue.
Right.
Which means you can never pretty much leave. You have to stay because it's a situation that's it's kind of unstable. That's the nature of the game there. 17 years in Afghanistan, 15 years in Iraq. 15 years. Obama was elected to get us out of Iraq, and Trump was elected in part by being the anti-Bush.
Right. And the fact of the matter is the Middle East was chaotic before we got there. The Middle East is chaotic today, and it's going to be chaotic after we leave.
It's worse. Is it worse?
I disagree.
Pre-9/11?
Trump has made the Middle East better.
Oh, Trump.
I would argue that.
I'm just
absolutely wouldn't argue that.
9/11 to, let's say, 2008. And ISIS comes. ISIS is born out of the instability in Iraq. We're still having insider attacks. I even hate calling them that, but our men are being murdered in Afghanistan. Another American soldier, Marine, reservist, murdered in Iraq for, or Afghanistan, excuse me, for what?
Yeah. But when Trump came in, when Trump came in,
our troops there do not keep us safe over here. We have many ways to keep us safe here. Otherwise, you will never be able to
never
keep
leave.
Ever.
Right. But
And
when
that's
Trump came into office, ICE was still running Iraq in the Middle East.
Well, he did
when
that.
Trump came into office, there were over 1 million refugees that poured into Western Europe. None of that's happening today, and that's all due to Trump.
Well, that's due to smart use of our military power, not we're going to fix this here, we're going to jump over here. I mean, when we have this situation, we were just talking about the border deal. You both know a lot about the border chaos right now. People at home, I think, sitting watching this going, wait a second, we love this. The Christians in Syria have been brutalized during this period of U.S. interventionism there. And like, we can't even police our own border. Yeah. And we're trying to police the borders of these countries that have been at war with each other for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. It's very confusing to people.
Right. So when people say, when people reflexively attack him to say, I'm pulling out, let's just wait and see what his plan is before we.
But here's the thing you have to keep into consideration. Those troops were sent there, number one, by Obama administration against the Constitution because he did not get congressional authorization for them. He was using initially unvetted people, that many of which were against their own interest. And even if you say the best of that, it was to get rid of ISIS in Raqqa. With
mission accomplished.
Mission was accomplished in 2017.
But we got the neoconservatives who don't realize still that Trump won. Okay, and they've been good on some issues, but they were up in arms, and a lot of defense contractors probably weren't happy today either. Let's watch.
This decision by the president was against sound military advice. That he did it himself, which he has every right to do, but he needs to own it.
Grave error that's going to have significant repercussions in the years and months to come.
Honestly, this makes what Obama did in Iraq. It's replicating that, but in many ways it's even worse. I've never seen a decision like this since I've been here in 12 years.
People hear that. Okay, you guys are just kicking the can down the road. Another CR you voted on tonight. You're like saying this is the worst thing I've ever. Not $20 trillion in debt. How much money have we spent in Iraq, Afghanistan? Do you guys know combined?
Oh well, I mean it's $45 billion just this year in Afghanistan alone. So you've got
$6 trillion something total.
Oh,
add it all up.
Trillions of dollars. Yeah, absolutely.
How much has China spent in Iraq and Afghanistan?
$1.50, I don't know, something like that. Not very, obviously, not very much at all.
They're watching us like we're going here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, they like it. They love it when we pour money out there that does nothing for our interest. And here's the thing: we can keep ourselves safe. We don't need ground troops in Syria because here's the thing: I can tell you from having served in Afghanistan and Iraq in similar missions like this, those small number of troops, the most things they do is actually defend themselves. They have very little ability to do anything, even on a tactical level, but certainly nothing on a strategic level. Our security will not be put in any threat by withdrawing those troops because our security is not dependent on them right now.
We're ceding Syria to Russia and Assad, though.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant.
They already were there. But they've been there before, and they're there afterwards.
And we agree on this. I mean, that's irrelevant. Look, the Syria has been America's enemy in the Middle East since forever. It's never bothered us. It's not about Syria. It's keeping the problems of Syria from making everything worse. And as long as the president is planning to do that, we should all be fine with it.
This is what National Review wrote today. The American military intervention in Syria represents one of the most successful, cost-effective military operations post-9/11 era at a minimal cost to American lives. The ISIS caliphate has been reduced to rubble. Russian and Iranian ambitions in Syria have been checked, and the U.S. has gained valuable territorial leverage in negotiation for a permanent peace. But there's work left to be done.
See, that's the one part I have issue with. This notion is we have to hold land, and where I completely disagree. We have to own land on the ground so we can help negotiate the political future of Syria. We don't give a damn about the political future of Syria. That is a misreading of U.S. national interests. We have to prevent Syria from becoming a bigger problem for us. And as if the president's got a plan to do that, we should support that. And we should start with where we are, which is look at what he's done the last 2 years. He's made the Middle East a better place. He's made Syria less of a problem.
He gets no credit for that.
He gets no credit.
He gets zero credit for that. But Adam Kinzinger is really unhappy, so we should change it. I'm sorry, but the interventionist thing brought us, in part, Barack Obama. I'm never going to forget that. All right, guys, thank you so much. No one else will have this conversation on TV tonight. No one. Up next, something very special, an important reminder about the cost of freedom. So we're just talking about. Raymond Arroyo takes us behind the scenes of an incredible holiday trip for Gold Star families called the Snowball Express. The holidays can be really difficult for those who've lost a loved one, especially the children of our fallen service members. Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo is here with me now for a lot more.
Laura, every year the Gary Sinise Foundation hosts a special trip that captures the spirit of Christmas. Last week, I joined these Gold Star families, Gary and the Snowball Express, at Disney World for an unforgettable 5-day experience, one that holds lessons for all Americans. You may have seen this video that went viral last week. The Nashville airport came to a standstill when travelers paused to sing the national anthem in the concourse. They were honoring children of fallen servicemen and women who were boarding a very special flight. This year, as it has for the last 13, the Snowball Express, sponsored by the Gary Sinise Foundation and American Airlines, has taken more than 1,000 children of the fallen from 87 cities on a Christmas trip filled with joy, family, and remembrance. Their destination was Disney World.
Every one of these children have lost a parent in military service. We want to focus on these kids. We want to bring them together in this healing environment and also allow them to have a lot of fun when they're doing it.
It's been really fun, and I've liked how we've got to go on all the rides at Disney World, and that because this is my first time at Disney World.
The walk of gratitude was just amazing at Disney, and it was super special.
Stephanie Collier, herself a war veteran, lost her husband to PTSD once he returned home. She and her 3 children joined the Snowball Express annually.
They had to deal with a lot at a young age, and she was only 2 months old when her father passed, so it was hard. It's been a huge change in them, too, the smiling faces.
For a moment, grief has been replaced with talk of a favorite ride.
The dino ride we went on when we saw
Dinosaur ride.
I love that ride.
Me too. What's your favorite?
Everest.
Melissa Alt-Ricci's husband died a month after their daughter Elle was born. Melissa sees this experience as an important one for her daughter and all the kids here to
just have fun and just let go and have fun and enjoy themselves, which is really nice because they all have quite a burden emotionally to bear just throughout life. And so sorry, so I just think it's really special to give them those moments.
I know holidays can be a rough time.
It can be, and especially when someone's always missing.
There is one special area at the resort set aside to remember the absent dads and moms who have brought them together. In between the fun and all the mirth to be had here, these families take a moment for remembrance. These 650 flags represent the men and women who have fallen in the line of duty or when they returned home. And these families take a moment in this room of remembrance to mourn them.
When I walked in, I was speechless. It's amazing when you look at these flags and you realize that it represents the parent of every child that is here, and also that this is just a small bit because there are so many others that have lost a family member, and it's just overwhelming. You're speechless. It's very emotional. My daughter did not know her father. He was the first Marine casualty after the start of post 9/11. So she was only 8 months old when he died, and just going through life without knowing your father, just hearing stories, but then becoming a part of Snowball, it makes you realize, and it makes her realize, wow, there are a lot of children here without a father, and you don't feel alone.
The shared experience bonds these Gold Star kids and allows them to establish close ties
It's been an awesome experience for me, like, over the years. I don't get to act like how I do now due to the fact that people would make fun of me.
So what will you take with you back to Arizona?
Probably probably just spending a bunch of time with our family and friends. The best thing about here is meeting new people and just making friends.
They just feel like they're not alone, and it's children who lost their parents, and just to know that it's so many of them that's going through the same thing that they're experiencing, you know, at such a young age. You know, this helps them cope.
I've made a lot of friends, and I think it's super special that they do this for us, and I love it here. Every year we come, we just make more and more friends as we come, and it's beautiful.
These two girls met at the airport in California and stuck together for the entire 5 days.
I just saw her at the airport, and she looked like she was my age. So I was like...
I hear she was filling something out.
She's doing college apps, and I was like, she's a C like me.
For us as moms, it gives us an opportunity to bond and then to talk about what we're doing to help our child to grieve. And it's a really good support system for us as well.
This year I met a new family. It's their first year, and she didn't know much about things that will help her, you know, through her grief. And I helped her through this whole time. She's been with us this whole time, and her daughter. And she told me that her daughter really hasn't talked about what has happened with her father, with any other children. So to come here and like watch them hold hands and go through the park together, that's the stuff that nobody else on the outside really gets to see. You know, they see kids who lost a dad, they don't see what they're feeling. And this is the family that sees, you know, they know what we're all going through, no matter what it is. And, you know, being in a military life is hard, and then losing somebody in it is very hard.
Every Snowball Express ends with a special concert by Gary Sinise and his Lieutenant Dan Band. This year was no exception.
So I want a rousing applause for Gary Sinise and the Lieutenant Dan Band!
Sinise and the band have been playing for Snowball Express families since 2007, eventually taking the entire program under the wing of his foundation.
What do you think as you watch these families recreating and forgetting about their loss for a bit and finding that camaraderie with one another?
It's wonderful to see them smiling. You know, that's the whole thing for me, is just to make these kids happy, to let them know they're loved and appreciated. They get a lot of love, a lot of support. And it's emotional for them, too, because they're all thinking about the reason that they're here. That's why we do it in December, you know. It is a tough time for children that have lost a parent. We show them that we're not forgetting, we remember, we don't forget. That can carry them into the next year with a new sense that hey, I'm important. You know, what I'm going through is appreciated. It's not being forgotten, and that there are others. I'm not alone in what I'm going through. It's a beautiful event. I'm so proud that we can support it.
Okay, that's the best thing on television tonight. What a great job on that. Thank you for doing that.
Well,
I was crying. I had to like makeup.
Well, the Gary Sinise Foundation really should be congratulated for this. And this was an incredible gift to me. I mean, I did not expect to hear these stories or to witness this kind of
You see the
heroism.
children's eyes, and every time I see one of these children in pain, or a spouse in pain, I think of how we're so blessed to live in this country.
You bet.
And I'm also righteously angry at people who don't appreciate and who put on masks and insult Marines in public, or worse, and don't appreciate all the wonderful things in our country.
These families and these kids who are carrying on, these are heroes despite the loss, and it is a heavy burden they carry. It's also a reminder of the high costs of our freedoms, Laura, that I think we forget. And I was surprised to learn from Gary and the families there the high number of servicemen and women who are plagued by PTSD once they come home. and the 20 members of our active and veteran members of the military commit suicide. So we need to stand with them, particularly this time of year, these families. God bless them. These kids were incredible, and the Gary Sinise Foundation. I have such respect.
Are there other celebrities who help him and do events with him?
Well,
I guess there might be a few.
they're the members of his band, but I don't see too many others lining up, and they should. They should.
But this is where you use, I mean, I wish I could play an instrument. I would go.
We're going to go on tour.
No,
with
I'm not. But it would be nice to have all these Rihanna and all these wonderful.
Yep.
And I know they do stuff. They do charitable things, so that's great. And
yeah.
But they all have such huge followings. It would be nice to see other people maybe occasionally go and help on this.
Important.
Fantastic. And from the sublime to the utterly ridiculous. Is Michelle Obama obsessed with the Trumps? No. What was billed as a book tour has instead turned into a revenge tour? Well, Michelle Obama once again sniping at the Trump family, this time on Jimmy Fallon. Here to debate is syndicated columnist Michelle Malkin and radio host and civil rights lawyer Leo Terrell. All right, you two. Mrs. Obama took 2 shots at the first family. Let's start with her thoughts on what happened on January 20th, 2017.
This is you. This is after the Trump inauguration, just waving from Air Force One.
Yeah, it's like.
Can you just walk me through?
Bye, Felicia.
Boy, I wish I was that cool. Michelle Obama is really hip. Malkin, can you ever remember a former First Lady? No, it's a snipe. I mean, I got to say I guess I'm not really that surprised about it, but what about that? And explain what Bye Felicia, for everyone watching who doesn't know what Bye Felicia means or what it conveys, tell the audience.
It's an insult, and clearly it is snark that is aimed at the incoming successors to the White House, and I think particularly to Melania Trump. And I'm not surprised. I called Michelle Obama Obama's bitter half, and the comments that she made, going all the way back to her Princeton thesis about her worldview, she's just exercising it all over again, and she's back with a vengeance and saltier than ever, and showing none of the grace and class that past first ladies have had, and the kind of collegiality that you're supposed to expect.
Wait, Michelle, she gets along with George W. Bush. They pass each other, little mints, and they're buddies. The Bushes and the Obamas are buddies.
Sure. After the Bushes left office. It's much easier to show that kind of comity afterwards, once they've ascended and transcended. But there's something else going on here, too, and I diagnosed it several months ago. The particular hatred that the left has for Melania Trump. This is an incredibly accomplished, polished woman, and yes, they like to throw her past in her face when every leftist is always saying that we should be allowed to make mistakes and learn from them, et cetera, et cetera. This is a woman who speaks multiple languages, who is an incredible mother.
No, they can't.
No, they can't.
I mean, it's Leo, your reaction to that. I mean, Bye Felicia is, kind of a blow off, to say the least. I don't know. I don't picture you saying Bye Felicia to anyone. That's just not Leo. I don't think so.
Well, thank you, Laura. Yeah, Bye Felicia, you said it correctly. It's a snipe. I listened to Michelle, and it's like the worst of all things. Disaster, hatred, vengeance. If we just use the Trump standard of how he's constantly attacked the Clintons, the Obama, throughout the last 12 years. If you look at his tweets, you look at all his insults, and Michelle Malkin is going to come on your program and call this hatred, vengeance, and then she spins off typically and talks about the left. So we're taking Bye Felicia, and I submit to you, Laura, that you look at all the Trump's insult, and I'll accept your reference. It's a snipe. She's on a comedy show, an entertainment show, But if you listen to Michelle, it's the end of the world. It's the worst thing ever said by a former First Lady. Shame on you, Michelle.
You're the one
Come
being
on. You can do better
hyperbolic,
than that.
Leo. You're the one being
sure I am?
hyperbolic. I'm putting it in the proper context. Let's not compare Michelle Obama to Donald Trump. Let's compare Michelle Obama to Michelle Obama, the woman who said, when they, meaning us, conservatives, go low, we go high. What is high about Bye Felicia except for the hand wave? Hi, bye, Felicia.
Okay.
Where's the going high?
All right, there's another moment, guys.
Compare her to her own standards.
All right, there's another moment.
Shame on you, Michelle. Shame on you, Michelle.
Let's
you have
keep
no
shame.
answer.
Let's keep shame out of it, and let's just go on to the next moment.
Okay.
There was another moment about what happened when Melania, she received a gift from Melania, when kind of a departing gift to the First Lady. Note how dismissive the former First Lady is of that kindness.
That was a day. And right before that, you know, my daughter's friends decided they needed a sleepover for the last day. I was like, are you guys kidding me? We're leaving. You got to take all your stuff, pick it up, the blankets, the bears. They're all crying. And it was like, get out. We got to go. So there was that, and then the Tiffany's box. It was just all, you know, a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah.
There's...
The Tiffany's box.